Hello. Welcome back to EPG. I'm, of course, Greg, your host. When I was in Vietnam, I went to one of the strangest theme parks I've ever been at in my life, and it was called the Cu Chi Tunnels. But in order to understand the Cu Chi Tunnels, you would need to understand the Vietnam War, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a crash course in that. The Vietnam War was kind of one war, three wars in one. It was a decolonization war, it was a civil war, and it was also uh, a hot war in the Cold War, so fighting communists and whatnot. Um, it was the North Vietnamese versus the Southern Vietnamese, the communist aligned North and the Western powers backed South. So basically, the way it started was that the French, fresh after World War II, wanted to maintain their colonies, and they were fighting to try to get them from splitting away, which is kind of ironic considering that the French were colonies of Nazi Germany from 1940 to 1944 ish. So the fact that they were fighting to keep their colonies abroad, kind of hypocritical. But anyway, so the North was fighting because they were backed by the Soviet Union, China, other communist powers to basically win their independence and then work into kind of the communist sphere. So when the French lost that war in 1954 with the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, it was up to the Americans to kind of take over, and because it then morphed into the Cold War, where it was now still North Vietnamese and South Vietnamese fighting to regain control of their country. So anyway, back to the Cu Chi tunnels. So there was a thing that was used by the North called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And the Ho Chi Minh Trail was just that. It was a footpath that could change depending on intelligence or what was needed. That went from the north all the way to the south, where they would bring supplies, food, ammunition, weapons, and it could cross borders because they were more concerned with winning than they were about rules. So yeah, people would just carry stuff and then walk from north all the way south. The Cu Chi Tunnels was the terminus of the Ho Chi Minh Trail right outside of Saigon, so the capital of South Vietnam, which later would become Ho Chi Minh City. So the Cu Chi Tunnels, I took a tour with a tour group that went out there, and they decided to show a whole bunch of propaganda videos from the war. I was the only American there. There was a couple Brits, a couple Australians, and they were all kind of watching me to see how I was reacting to the propaganda, which was interesting. Anyway, so we got to the Cu Chi tunnels, and a couple things that stood out to me. Three things in particular. Number one was they actually let you go through the tunnels. So basically, they are kind of like clay that are down in the ground. So there are like storage areas and stuff. But they were designed for Viet Cong soldiers, previously Viet Minh, then Viet Cong. So they were, I'm 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. These guys were 5'6" and maybe 120 soaking wet. So yeah, these tunnels were not made for me. And it was the only time in my life that I've ever been claustrophobic because I was down in there. It felt like the walls were kind of creeping in on me. And yeah, that was something that I never want to do again, is to be stuck in one of those tunnels. But yeah, I got down on my hands and knees and I kind of crawled my way out. Got a little dirty because of that, but hey, whatever, I got out. Couple other things. There was a animatronics were set up, so they had like all these people dressed like Viet Cong, doing activities like making bombs, taking apart American ordnance and making that into weapons. So like there was this one where it was a bomb that didn't go off, so they would go take like pieces of metal and start sharpening it to make it into knives or whatever. So that was incredibly weird, kind of watching these uh, robots do these actions like this. Another part where I know I said there were three parts, but something just came to me, is that they would have in the ground little places where it was completely hidden, where the guides would know where they were just kind of like the tops on the tunnels, so that you can take off the top of the tunnel and get down in there and then pull the top and then scurry about. So when I would hear stories about people in Vietnam where Charlie, would just pop out of nowhere. That is exactly what they would do because a guide got in there and then popped up. And then just imagine if somebody had an AK-47, could shoot an entire squad and then just hide back down. So, I mean, yeah, it really kind of put that in perspective. But the most difficult thing about the Coochie tunnels were the booby trap exhibit. So they would have punji sticks. So they would show what punji sticks were. They were sharpened bamboo that were buried in the ground that had feces smeared on them with the hopes that a GI would not see it, step on into the pit, and then, be impaled on it. It would probably get infected. They would lose the foot, but definitely be taken out of the fight. There were a couple tiger traps where basically the same kind of the punji sticks, but there would be a whole bunch of them, and there would be a platform above it where if somebody were to step on it, their weight would cause it to shift, and then they would fall into the pit and then get stabbed all over the place. There was another one where it was kind of like a log that would be attached to a tree, where if somebody hit a tripwire, the log with a whole bunch of sharpened sticks on it would come swing down and then hit somebody and impale them and kill them that way. But the thing that kind of put it into perspective was they had a mural on the back wall of this exhibit where it was all these GIs screaming in pain, blood, spurting out everywhere. That was difficult to see, considering that I know people who had fought in Vietnam and their friends that had died in some of these ways. But I will say, one of the saddest parts of this was actually before we got to the Coochie tunnels, is where they took us to a little factory where people were making tourist knickknacks for sale. These people had been afflicted with Agent Orange. So a lot of these people were born after the war, and Agent Orange was used to take out a lot of the leaves in the jungle because that's where people were fighting, and it was very easy to hide. So the government used Agent Orange to spray and kind of kill all the leaves, so that way they'd be easier to be seen from the air, and you could drop bombs on them or whatever. But it was, some would say, the most toxic chemical ever created. And yeah, there are people that are still getting birth defects from it. So people were there without arms, people were there without legs, people were there with malformed arms and legs. Yeah, these were people that were born way, way after the war was over. So Agent Orange would seep into the groundwater, or there would be other things that would just be covered in it. So that was difficult to see because these people, they had nothing to do with the war, but they were still suffering parts of it. Um, but yeah, so they were at this factory because they wanted to still contribute to their families and not be a burden. So they were making this stuff in order to sell it. So all in all, it was a difficult thing to do, but I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad that I saw how the American War, that's what they call that there. That's what they call the Vietnam War over there, is the American War. But I'm glad I'm seeing it. I'm glad I saw it as an American, and I'm glad I saw it as somebody who was able to put it in historical context for what it was. So, if you are interested in doing something similar, you can book a tour and go to the Coochie Tunnels, which again is outside of Ho Chi Minh City. I would not bring any veterans of the Vietnam War there. It got a little raw. So anyway, thank you very much for your time, and get out there.